I'm going to say over mostly from the Maharal in Netzach Yisrael, from many of the different prakim, how he views our days, the days that we're living in terms of Chorban Abayis and in terms of the Geula Hasidah. Before I say over the Maharal, I have a kasha every day. Kasha I've asked a few times that you say Uluvnei Yushalayim Ercha Barachim Toshav V'Siska B'Socha Kasha Dibarta Uvnei Oisa B'Korav V'Yameinu, and Hashem should build the Yerushalayim speedily soon in our days. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not building Yerushalayim. At the best, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is building the Mikdash Shlishi. That's Rashi Shita, that the third base of Mikdash is going to come down from Shemayim, and it's be built by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not be built by Bnei Adam. At least most of it's not by Alidei Bnei Adam. Yerushalayim is the city. Yerushalayim is not built by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Ata Hashem B'nei Yerushalayim. He's not the builder of Yerushalayim. He's the contractor. It's under his auspices. The whole world is under HaKadosh Baruch Hu's auspices. So what does it mean? He's a B'nei Yerushalayim. In Birchas HaMazon you say similarly, Uvnei Yerushalayim HaKadosh B'nei Yameinu. Uvnei B'nei Barachma of Yerushalayim Amen. B'nei, he's the builder. What's the pshat? And it should bother everybody when they're davening the Shemona Esrei. So a few years ago I answered it in one of the shiurim for Pesach based on the Maharsha. I'd like to answer it today based on the Maharal. Famous Gemara in Makis, the end of Makis talks about that Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim, they went into Yerushalayim, they saw the Beis HaMikdash, the Makkah HaMikdash, in its Chorban, and what happened was they saw Shualim Holchim Boy. The foxes were running around the Makkah HaChorban, and they cried, all the Chachamim cried. And Rabbi Akiva was Seichek, he laughed. So they asked him, there's a Chorban, Shualim Holchim Boy, there's a Chorban, and you're laughing? So Rabbi Akiva answered as follows, famous Gemara, because it says the pasuk, Va'ida li edim ne'emanim. Yeshaya Navi says that will testify truthful, honest testimony that what? It's Uriah, Hakayim, Zechariah. Now Uriah was by Bayis Rishon, and he talks about the destruction, and Zechariah talks about the building by Bayis Sheni, after Mikdash Sheni. Ela Tola HaKosav, Nuvasa Shel Zechariah b'Nuvasa Shel Uriah. By Uriah it says, Begalchem Tzion Sadeh Techrash, because of you, because of our Averis, that Tzion, the place of Yerushalayim, the place of the Mikdash, is going to be plowed, is going to be desolate. And also, Zechariah says, Od Yeshvu Zkenos Berchoivos Yerushalayim. They're going to be in the streets of Yerushalayim. Until the Kiyam of the Nevuah of Uriah, Hayisim Misyare Shema Lo Tizkayim Nevuah Zechariah. I was afraid that maybe the Nevuah of Zechariah would not be fulfilled. Now that I see it was fulfilled, the Nevuah of Uriah, Biyadua, now it's known that the Nevuah of Zechariah will be fulfilled, and they said, Nechamtanu Akiva, Nechamtanu Akiva, Nechamtanu. The Gemara is a Pella, the Maharal asks. Is there a place for somebody to doubt prophecy, to doubt Nevuah? Until he saw one Nevuah, he didn't see this Nevuah be Miskayim. By the way, it wasn't Mekuyim. He didn't see it. Until he didn't see the Nevuah being Mekuyim, he had a doubt on the Nevuah of Zechariah. Pillay Plum, it can't be. There's no place for somebody to have, especially Akiva, there's no place for anyone to have a doubt in Nevuah. That's number one. And number two, the Maharal asks, what does it mean, Va'ida Edem Ne'emanim? Eidos is two. Here you have two separate Eidos, two separate times, Eidos on two separate things. One's talking about an aid of destruction, that's Uriah, of desolation of Yerushalayim. And Zechariah is talking about the building of Yerushalayim in a different kufa. That's not Eidim Ne'emanim, that's the Eid Echad. Good, so you have an Eid here and an Eid here. But it sounds like it's one Eidos. And even Rabbi Akiva says that it's one Eidos because Tolo Zeh al Gabe Zeh, Bezeh Bezeh. One's dependent upon the other. What's the pshat? Maharal is a Powerful question. And of course, the other question is, Akiva Nechamtanu, Akiva, what they also didn't know this eventually is going to be a binyan in Yerushalayim. They didn't know that Chachamim, he gave a Nechamin out to them. They also had a suffix. The Gemara needs a good hezber. Maral has another kasha. I think that this was in Perek Chavav. Maral has another kasha. Maral says in Yeshaya, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Elokei Olam. Right now he's called the master of the world. Hashem Barek Saisa Haaretz. He's the master of the world. And that means he built it and he controls it. And Maral says the Beis HaMikdash is the Ikar Pe'er HaOlam. That is the glory of the world. And when you have a Beis HaMikdash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself. You have the Maila Elokis, and you see the shleimus of the tachlis of the world of the Bria. Kol Zman, there's no Beis HaMikdash. The Brias HaOlam is Chaser. In fact, there's a Medrash. The Medrash says, Breishis Bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. That's Mikdash Rishon. V'haaretz haisa sovavo v'choshech ha'pnei sahaim. The destruction, desolation, that's the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And then, Vayom Elokim v'hior, that's Bayis Shlishi. That's the ultimate. That's Mashiach and Bayis Shlishi. There's other chazals like that. And you see in between that, you have the Arba Malchus, Maral in other places says that that's the Arba Malchus, it brings a chazal. But, so you see that the Ikar Olam, part of Brias HaOlam, at the outset of Brias HaOlam, talks about Beis HaMikdash, B'binyana, B'chobana, and then B'binyana. And without the Beis HaMikdash, it's V'haaretz haisa sova vova choshech ha'pnei sahaim. There's no Bria. So how does Yeshaya, Maral asked the kasha, how does Yeshaya call right now, in our times, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Elokei Olam? It's a chaser. It's not nigla. And we know what's not nigla we don't express. How do we know that? That's the Gemara Psachim. Lo kshani nichtav ani nikra. Because Baruch Hu should have been Yud Kei Vav Kei, we should have been able to express it that way. But nowadays he can't express it and he used the Lashon Adnas. Or you had, he took out a Giba V'Hanoira from the Shemana Esrei because HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Churban is not Megala himself, Godov and a Giba V'Hanoira. On that, the Anshe Knesset Agdola was Machzer Atali Yoshna, and they reinserted it because you do see that Midah Behester. You see the Midah Behester. So it's seen. But whatever is not seen and revealed, we don't define it that way. So Maral says, so why are we calling HaKadosh Baruch Hu right now Elokei Olam, when the primary glory of the world is missing? So it's inappropriate to refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu like that. That's the Maral's kashas. Before we get to his teretz, let's go into a little bit of our times. This the Maral talks about later on in Perek Lamed Hey. He brings the Gemara, famous Gemara in the Sanhedrin. The Gemara talks about Ba'achris Hayomim, the Dor Sheben David Ba, the generation that Mashiach Tzidkenu, Bar Nafli, then David, when he comes. And it says over there, Talmidei Chachamim is mismatim. There'll be a lessening, not as many Talmidei Chachamim. And Talmidei Chachamim are Megan on the world, so they're going to be taken away from us at that point, and there'll be less of a Hagana, less of security for the world. Also, as many say, that they're taken away from us because they don't want to see the Chorbana, they don't want to be part of the Chevlei Mashiach, that it should come Yesei V'lo Achlamei. It should come, but I shouldn't see it. So Talmidei Chachamim are naturally taken away, as unfortunately we've been experiencing over the last couple of years. Vashar and the other people who are left over, and Neim Kolos B'Yogon V'Anocha. So they have tremendous amount of Yogon, sorrow, V'Anocha. Anocha could be called anxiety, depression, many different things. And it becomes a depressed world and people are insecure, unsure. We call it the Stipler, a beautiful letter. As an aside, the Stipler talks about that in Azman, about the massive amount of, and talking about the Stiples time, depression, that the Stiple was nifta 49 years ago. So these letters are from 60 years ago, 50 some odd years ago. The amount of depression in the world, anxiety, people are neurotic and other different things. And he talks about mental illness, and Stiple was a mumcha in this, many letters from the Stiple about that. And the Stiple writes that a person has to realize that's no different than if a person has any chayla haguf. If a person has a heart problem or any organ problem, a lung problem, an allergy, these are machas that come to a person. Sometimes it's the person's fault, sometimes it's another fault, and sometimes we just don't know the cheshbon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we don't see the sibas hadvarim. And he says, just like a person can ask for Rifa'inu Hashem v'nei Rafei, Hoshi'elu v'nivasheya, in Nichlal in that is the refuah for this also. And a person can go to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, I'm depressed, or I have anxiety, or I have fears, or whatever I have, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu can heal it. Because he's the Sibas HaKol. And a person has to realize that we have to judge people the same way. If a person's missing a finger, if a person's missing something in his head, it's all the same thing by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that he says over there, that Nichlal in the Shemona Esrei, when you say, V'haser mimenu yogon v'anacha, the end of his letter, V'haser mimenu yogon v'anacha, you should take away from us the yogon, the sorrow of anacha, and the anxiety. So a person should have kavanah about all his anxiety, mental illnesses, or the pressure, anything else that a person has. And that's a thing, I have a kavanah in the Shemona Esrei over there, that in all different areas, v'haser mimenu yogon v'anacha. But Gemara says, I think that's kalape this Gemara, in the Shemona Esrei. V'hashiva shavteinu kavrishoina. It's the parallel, it's the antidote for the Shemona Esrei. The Shemona Esrei is for the Gemara. V'hashar einayim kolos b'yogon v'anacha. It's going to be a generation of yogon v'anacha. And I think we're experiencing that. V'tzoros rabos gzeros koshos. There's going to be tremendous sorrows and hard decrees on the world. Ad she'arishayna pekudosh shniyam v'meheres lavo. By the time the first one's filled, the second one's already coming. It's havoc. It's devastating. It's total destruction. And then we call, of course, the Gemara later on says, Rabbi Noroi says, what's going to happen in that generation, that Na'arim yalbinu pnei Zekanim, and Zekanim yamdu l'fnei Na'arim, it's going to be a total lack of what the Maral calls from the Seder Olam, from the norm. When Zekanim are going to have to give cover to the Na'arim, to the youngsters will disrespect, a world of chutzpah. Now, we have a problem, because everything we judge on is based on the generation before. So, yes, we think we're more abnormal than normal, but the truth is we're more abnormal than abnormal. We've been living lives of abnormality since Churban HaBayis. So we just think whatever was in the past is normal. So we don't see so devastating. But if great-great-great-great-grandparent would have just seen our grandparents, they would have seen Bnei Brak in the 50s. They would have seen Lublin in the 30s. They would have seen Vilna in the 1800s. And they lived much earlier. They said, this is not an abnormal place. We just get used to abnormalities and it becomes the new norm. But ba'achris hayamim, even the new norm, it will be so abnormal, that nobody could fathom it. It's against the Seder Olam. When a person thinks in our world, this is normal, he has a personal problem at this point. He doesn't realize what's normal. What you're conditioned to does not make it normal. What's normal is the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu is buried the Olam. That's normality. So what's going to happen then is going to be a total disarray, dysfunction in terms of kavod. But then comes Rav Nechemia, This is what I want to focus on. The Chemra says, of course, the generation that David comes Azus, comes Chutzpah, and we do live in Chutzpah prevails. In government, it's not intellect today, it's Chutzpah. It's not the power of persuasion, it's not the power of influence. It's Chutzpah that prevails. Vayoker Yo'aves. What's Vayoker Yo'aves? Rashi says two pshatim. First of all, Rashi says, Shol Yichabdu Zeh, people will be distorted covet. People will not honor one another, will talk down about other people, will disrespect people, and that brings your covet, that brings the covet of a person. The Rashi says also, Mechubed Yo'aves Mechubed Shebehem, that Mechubed Shebehem Yeh Avson V'Ramai. The honorable people, the respectable people, the people on top are going to be Ramaim, and they're going to be, obviously, they're going to be distorted people. So even the bad people, the ones who should be mevuzah, the buzzer, is going to be the mechubed, ba'achris hayomim. Painting a picture of our world. And then, v'agefen yitem piryoy, v'ayayim b'yoyker. So what's going to be, there will be abundance of grapes. There will be a lot of resources in the world. Abundance of grapes, but wine will be expensive. Comes Rashi, why will wine be expensive if there's abundance of grapes? So when he talks about maybe the resources aren't good resources, that's one shot. You can use it however you want. But the second Rashi says, because there's going to be a lot of drunkenness. There'll be a lot of grapes, an overabundance of grapes, and an overabundance of drinking. And then you can expand that also, because everything when the Gemara talks about, it's not exactly that one specific thing. It's more of it's a base av. It's the av to teach you all the Toldos, be it addictions, be it other type of things that's going to be in the world. That the Gefen's going to be eating your period, but the Yayin's going to be biyoker. Then the Gemara says, V'nevcha kol hamalchus leminas. The whole world, the complete world, will become a heresy. They're going to be min. What's a min? Min is not just a kaifer. Why is a kaifer called a min? So I heard from Moshe Shapiro, and I think it's also one part of it's moral. The word min comes from the shirish emunah. It's without the aleph. And what the person's doing, he's being kaifer in emunas HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Brias HaOlam. So what he's really saying is, I'm not meshubah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because there is no HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what he's also saying is that he's not a creation. He's a kaifer b'sheishis mei gracious. A min is a kaifer in Brias HaOlam. If you're kaifer in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're kaifer in Brias HaOlam. So if that's the case, you're not a creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if that's the case, you're your own species. You're a min bifnei atzmai. Moshe Shapiro said the word min means I'm a min, I'm a new species. I'm not the species that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. Fascinating thing. And that comes from, that's the concept of minas, the depth of minas, which takes away from emunah. So the whole world is going to be a world of kfira. Kfira of what? Fear of the past generation. Fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in so many different ways. You know, the keichi v'otzim yadi, the concept of it's all about me. V'nevcha kol hamalchus leminas. And then v'ein tochacha. And you can't rebuke them, you can't reproof them. There's no argument. They're brainless. There's nothing to argue about. That's the end when the Mashiach starts to come. The Dorshim ben David Ba. And then comes Rabbi Yitzchak and says, he brings a pasuk to this, that Ein ben David Ba Achid the Hepach Kol Malchus Leminas, the entire universe will be heresy. Amar Rava Mikra, Kulo hafach lovan toru. By tzaras, it says that if a person has some white on himself, discolored, so then he's tamei. But kulo hafach lovan, if he totally became white, there's no skin, it's no healthy skin, so what happens? Then he's tar. Say it's a custom, then he's tar. Okay, that b'chlal zapella. But comes Rava and says that's what Rabbi Yitzchak means. That's the pasuk on the door that when David comes, when Mashiach comes. So it's going to be nepach laminas. My inyan saras laminas. What does one thing have to do with another? There's no shaychus. Comes the Maral. Maral says a yisoid of today, a yisoid that we can use every day in our lives. And he says as follows. He says, what's the difference between partial saras and complete saras? He says, when saras affects just part of the body, so you have a person, you have a being, and there's an ongoing loss or absence. So it disrupts a person's normal state, because I'm normal, I'm a tzelem elokim, and what happens, it disrupts it, and therefore the person becomes impure, becomes tamei. It's a mixas misa. But when there's complete saras, that's not a disruption anymore. That's a redefinition. That's a total loss, a total absence. And it's not disrupting my order of life, but it's the end, the negation of the life that I have. There's no more tzelem elokim at this point. But there can't be such a thing. So what is that? So it's a preparation for a new state of existence. In one sense, it's totally destruction. It's the end. The other sense, it prepares for a new existence, because Haral's shita is, in order to have a transformation, the only way to have a transformation is to negate, to destroy the past. Building on something that's here is nothing new. It's building. It's continuation. You know, it's when you do renovations in a home. Renovations in a home means that there's something existing, I'm just fixing it up. But when I destroy the house, you don't do renovations. You have to build a new home. And it's a totally different bria. He says, but there has to be a total destruction. The reason why tsaras, when it's complete tsaras, and it's kula hafach lovan, is tarho, because it's the rebuilding of the person at this point. It becomes a whole new state of a person coming into tahira. It's the beginning process of tahira. That's what total destruction is. Comes the Maral and says, in order for Mashiach to come, it's not being built on the state of events and the state of the world the way it is. It's a whole new world. And in order for that new world to exist, it has to be a total destruction of the old world. It has to be heresy. It has to be meanness. What's meanness? Meanness means it's a new min. A new min. It's not a chesaron in the first min, in the Adam, which, by the way, Adam's not called a min. If you look in Chumash, there's no min by Adam. Adam is Adam. The animals are a min. It's now becomes a min. It's a total destruction of the human being. The whole destruction of the world. Total destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Oh, when you have that, what is that? That's heresy. Heresy is the universal rejection of our traditional beliefs. The universal rejection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the past. That's a precondition for Mashiach to come. So it's beautiful. The Tzushtel is beautiful. is that Kulo Hafach Lovan is Tahor. That is the concept of Nehefach Kol HaMalchus Laminas, total dysfunction in a world, and that's the principle of absolute and total negativity is not a disruption, but it's a process of transformation, and that's Tahor, and that's the beginning of Mashiach. So that's the pshat. Dor Sheben David Ba is Bai. In that generation, this is what happens. That's the Maharal's look at things, and he says you see this in many layers. You see this in, for instance, you see this by an egg with the chicken. What happens is that the egg, that's the Gemara Pesachim, that the egg has to get destroyed. What goes on inside gets destroyed. Otherwise, you have a good soft-boiled egg, and then you have a boiled egg. But what happens is it has to destroy to give room for the chick to be born. So that's called a total destruction in order to have a transformation. So the universal heresy becomes a new norm. Lives that, not the exception, that's the lives we live in. And that's really Pshat in the Gemara. The Gemara later on says that what's going to be, the Mashiach ben David comes when? Achi Yismatu HaTalmidim. A little different than the first Gemara. There's going to be a lessening of the Talmidim. So, Shmuel Yankov Bornstein told me when I was once by his house, many times by his house, he says the pshat, he says, and sometimes in Eretz Yisrael, when they go against yeshivas and the kolim, and they try to make gzeiros on Liman HaTorah, he says that's the pshat, Achi Yismatu HaTalmidim. There's going to be gzeiros on Liman HaTorah, on Batei Midrashim, kolim, on Talmidei Chachamim. There's going to be gzeiros on them, ba'achris hayomim, that should be nismayim, that they shouldn't be there. And because at the end of the day, everyone knows weakening the power of Torah weakens the moral and the spiritual foundation of a society. And that's what we're experiencing today. You know, a whole group, a mission to minimize Liman HaTorah. And the Gemara says also, there's going to be economic decline. You know, we see that, the markets. We see government destroying the economy from all different ways. A breakdown in societal stability and functionality comes from economic losses. And there'll be misairis. There'll be betrayal. There's no trust amongst people. No trust in government, no trust in community. And what happens is, there's going to be also Achi Yisyayish Menagula. There's going to be a Yish, which means despair about the future Geula, which means morale of people goes down, and then of course people don't believe in themselves as well, and a total disruption. But Maharal says this is a necessary transformation, a piece for the transformation of Mashiach. And that's what it means in the beginning of the Sefer Breishis Bar Elokim es Hashamayim v'Haaretz. That's the first world. Means the destruction of the first world. Not the rebuilding of the first world, the destruction of the first world. And then you have Vayom Elokim Hi-Ar, that's Irish Shal Mashiach, Irish Shal Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi. So absence really is the cause of existence. If there's no absence, no existence will occur. That is call it the principle of the Maharal. That's the days we're living in, no doubt about that. Doesn't mean the year, doesn't mean the day, it means Dar. That generation, as large as that generation could be, as wide as that generation could be. Comes to Maharal now, the other prakim, Maharal says, that's the pshat, that Uriah and Zechariah were called Eidos Ne'emana, faithful witnesses, because of course he knows the Nevuah. He knows it's going to be true. There's going to be a binyan Beis HaMikdash. There's going to be a new world. There's no question about it. But when did the new world start? Is it starting Rabbi Akiva's time, 100 years later, 1,000 years later? When's the binyan of this new world? When he saw the Churban, and it's so desolate, there's nothing left from the Beis HaMikdash, and Shualim Holchem Bay, it's total, there's no remnants of it. There's nothing there, total absence. When they have a total absence, that's Kulo Hafach Lavan. And Kulo Hafach Lavan Tar. Rabbi Akiva saw at that point is the binyan's beginning. That's the Pella. The binyan HaMikdash happened when the Churban, the same time of the Churban HaMikdash. Maharal brings someplace else a measure that says that Mashiach was born by the day of the Churban HaBayis. That's what we have, that we say, but Tisha B'Av is going to be Nolad Mashiach. It means that first Tisha B'Av. He says it doesn't mean a physical birth. It means the conceptual, the beginning of it, called the Hiroyin of it. It's starting, the process of it starts. That's where Rabbi Akiva saw. He wasn't doubting the prophecy. Of course it'll be. But he saw the beginning of the prophecy right now. And therefore it's taloi, one's taloi in the other. Because without Uriah's prophecy of destruction, so then the prophecy of the rebuilding is not chal yet. So on that he says, the Edom, the two Edom, talking two parts of it, but they're seeing the same thing, two different times. But the Edom Ne'emanim, and of course, there was a belief in the Eidos of in the Nevuah of the Nevi'im, and that's what the Chachamim said. Akiva Nechamtanu. You gave us a nicha. Of course, we believed in it all the time, but now we're seeing rebuilding. Maharal says. Before we get there, and that's why Kadosh Baruch Hu, Maharal says, is called Adon Olam, the Adon Shel Olam, the Master, Elokei Olam, the Master of the world, because Kadosh Baruch Hu remains the Master of the world even in its destruction. Because in its destruction, you see from the absence, you see the beginning of the new existence, and Kadosh Baruch Hu leads that way, leads it. So there's no time that he's void of it. Our availus on Yerushalayim is the fact that we don't have it right now. The fact that we don't have it b'vinyana. We have it, but it's not b'vinyana. And maybe that's why, so another Maharal talks about, different parak, talks about that's why the Kedusha still remains over here. The Kedusha is there, but the building is not there. So Mashiach is born is the potential of the world. And he says another fascinating thing, that this that we don't see, the Mashiach coming, there's an absence and delay in Mashiach's arrival. He said that's all part of the binyan. Such a new look of Afapi. So a whole new look. The absence is a necessary component for Bias HaMashiach. Because the absence of Mashiach is part of the desolation, the absence of the world. So it's part of Bias HaMashiach. Beautiful understanding of the Maharal. And Maharal says also that a person, everything gets defined the way a person sees it. If a person has a situations in life that it's a total desolation, because we were talking about the world, we were talking about the Beis HaMikdash. It's true by Ed. It's true by individual things. Sometimes everything looks like it's falling apart in one's life, that it's total destruction in one area. So is that destruction or is that rebuilding? What is it? You lose a job. You lose an account. You have a health issue. Different things. You have be financial, spiritual, business, anything. What is it? Is it destruction or is it rebuilding? It depends how you see it. If you see it as destruction, then it's going to be destruction. Because man defines reality. It brings a lot of psukim. Man defines reality. If you look at it as the rebuilding, the opportunity to rebuild, then it's rebuilding. And that's all the process of Geula. Everything is the way a person decides, not the way he naturally sees it, the way a person decides to see it, and then the way a person reacts to it. And that gives us the Koyach HaTfilah. Because when a Koyach HaTfilah, we're saying there's a hope. That's the power of the person to define the reality. But the reality in a person's life should really be in many different things. It's kula hafak lavan taharo. And a person has to have a certain chama at that point, that it's taharo, so I can rebuild on that. I want to finish with this. Maharal brings a medrash that Mashiach lives in Biras Arva. In other words, he lives in the Arab states. He says he lives in the capital of Arabia, which means until, and he talks about it at length, without quoting it, he says until Mashiach is revealed to Klal Yisrael and to the world, he lives in the kingdom of the Arabs. So Maharal again says, like he says in many places, doesn't mean physically, because we're not talking about physical reality, but it's figuratively. The intellectual order of Mashiach, his purpose, his essence, starts in Yishmael. And he talks about that at length. It talks over there, and he has a connection to the place of the Arabs. And why is that? He says similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was born in Mitzrayim, brought up in Mitzrayim, brought up in the house of Paro, in the fullness of Mitzrayim. He says he was brought up in the lowest place, in one sense. The highest place about Mitzrayim, but the lowest place in morals, and the lowest place of what Tumas Mitzrayim and what it represents. And why is that? Because the only way for Moshe Rabbeinu to bring Klal Yisrael, to be the leader of Klal Yisrael from Golus to Geula, that he has to start in a place of total disarray, total lack of order, total tumah, in totality. He has to be kulo hafach lavan. There has to be nothing there. And ultimately, Mitzrayim is going to be totally destroyed. And that complete absence rises Moshe Rabbeinu to a higher existence of reality, into new reality. So too, he says, Mashiach has to be part of the, again, figuratively, of the Yishmaelim, of the Arab states, to show the complete end of the Arab states, and dafka from the destructions of the Arab states comes Mashiach. And he says as follows. In Sefer Bereshis by Avram, Pasuk says, because Baruch Hu tells Avram, Uyishmol shmatich, and I heard you, in terms of Yishmael, and therefore Yishmael is going to be alive. Hine berachti oisav, efreisi oisav, erbeisi oisav. They're going to be a large multitude of a nation. They are the largest nations today. B'ma'od ma'od. Shneim asa nesiim. 12 different princes. 12 tribes, different countries. Yolid unesativ l'goy gadol. Very big emphasis. The power of Yishmael. Nesiim, nun shin, sin, yud, aleph, mem, is chosu yud. Based upon the Maral says, what's the pshat? Says Ayin Rashi, Maral's in Gurari. Shneim Osa Nesiyim, Kanonim Yichlu. They're going to be destroyed, evaporate like clouds. Here we're talking about the strength of Yishmael, but it's a Chosser Yud to say that Kanonim Yichlu. Maral Gurari also says it doesn't call it Shvatim because of that. It calls it Nesiyim, the Lashon of a cloud. So you're talking about the greatness of Yishmael, the Arab states, which is expressed in the multiplicity, of princes, of areas and powers, but it's missing the koyach. Maral says the koyach of the Yud, missing the koyach of Ruchni, of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and it indicates that it's going to vanish like a cloud. So he is the power above. He's like the power of clouds that's above, but he also vanishes with a cloud. And he says, and that's why Mashiach has to be part of that concept, because he comes from something which is going to be total absence. Unlike Edom, which still remains, will be part of the world. So here, it continues or revises, or they'll be part of the new world. But over here, they won't exist. It vanishes, its power, its concepts, that is, vanishes totally. That's from the absence comes out the existence of Mashiach, comes out the existence of a new world. And where does Mashiach come from? So that's the Pasuk Daniel, he comes from the clouds, or Onan, and he rides on top of it. And that's what we see in our days. And we're experiencing it. We're part of great times, and we have to take advantage of that. Use our koyach hatfilah, use our positivity, use our recognition of the more you see the heresy, the more you're going to see the kulotar. And we have to invest in that. And that's why I think it says, we say, Uvnei Yerushalayim. Because Baruch is building the Beis HaMikdash. And building the Beis HaMikdash is the building of a new world. It's a world called Yerushalayim. That's done by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not just us rebuilding Yerushalayim. It's a different Yerushalayim. It's a Yerushalayim built on the absence of the destruction of our old world. And when a person does tshuva in these days, through Elul, and to Rosh Hashanah Kippur, it's not just bettering yourself, it's making yourself different. Briskerov says it many times. It's not bettering yourself, make yourself different. Destroy your past. Make it kulo hafach lavan. And lavan is that color of purity. And then it'll be tar, and then together we'll greet Mashiach Tzidkenu, b'mheira v'yameinu.